Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to be talking about carrying yarns along the side, also known as floating your yarn, when you're working striped patterns. For this video, I'll be using Lion Brand's Vanna's Choice and a Furls K-hook. So let me set these supplies aside and get started. Alrighty, here I have a small swatch that I've started. Obviously this isn't much of a project, but this is just an example. I have two colors here, two different shades of green that I'm working in stripes, 2 rows each. So I'll be carrying these yarns along the side because I don't want to have to cut my yarn after every 2 rows. So let me insert my hook back in the hook loop here. Now if I were cutting my yarn, I would just have a new end of the dark green that I'd start here. But instead, since I'm switching colors and I want to float my yarn, I'm going to finish the last stitch of this color with the next color, whatever that may be. In this case, it's the first one we're using since I'm only using 2 colors. So I will pull that through right there. Now, let me pull these light green ones out of the way a little bit. So you can see that that dark green color there is what a lot of people call floating or being carried right along the side of my swatch. Now, from here, I can just continue crocheting with the dark green and whatever my stitch pattern is. And I will have that little bit hanging out there like so. Then, when I finish my dark green stripe, I can pull the light green up to finish that. And you can see both of those then will float along the side. Now, here's the trick to this. You want to make sure when you do that first yarn over and pull through, this one right here, where you just pulled it through at the end of that last stitch of the previous color, you don't want to pull too tight. If you pull that loop too tight or too short, let me put it this way, it will shrink the sides of your pattern. You'll get puckering, and the sides of your work will shrink up like this. If you make it too loose, let me pull it out a little bit here so I can create that look, then we've got these flappy bits hanging out the sides, and that's not good either. So really, the trick to it is when you pull up that color there, the next color, the new color, the old color, whatever color you're using next. Got my yarns turned around a little bit here. There we go. The key is to just make sure you've got the right amount of tension. So you want to pull through a little bit, maybe have it a little tight, and then just give it a little tug. You can even do that after you've chained a little bit for your first stitch of the next row. We'll just chain 2, oops, like so, there we go. And I can give it a little tug to some extent to help make sure that it's long enough, but not so long it's hanging off the side. Now, the more rows you're skipping with a float, the more likely you are to have a little bit of flapping there. So the trick to that is to secure the floating yarn in your stitches even when you're not using them along the side. Let me show you what I mean. I know that sounded a little confusing. I'm going to pull out the last stitch of the last row there. And let's say I want to make a whole bunch more of the light green, so I don't want the dark green just hanging out there for a whole bunch of rows. So what I'm going to do is when I go down here to start that last stitch, I'm going to go ahead and flip the unused color over the yarn that I'm crocheting with, just like so. You can see it's underneath the hook, so it's not caught up on top of the stitch, but it's under the hook and over the yarn I'm yarning over with, like so. So when I pull through and finish my stitch, it's actually anchored down a little bit along the side there. Let me pull that light green out of the way. That's that first end of the green there, so we're not worrying about that right now. That'll get woven in later. But you can see, and this actually pulls it to the back a little bit, which, if this is the right side of your work, can be quite handy. It hides it even more. And of course, even when it's in back, everything gets flipped over unless it's a basket or a hat. So if it is a hat or something round like a basket or a hat, you can float them along the inside and you don't have to worry about covering them later because that part's going to be against the head. It's not going to show. But the other key to this method, I guess you could say, is covering up your floats or your carried yarn when you're done with your project. So let's go ahead and yarn over with this one. and pull through and finish our stitch. So you can see I've got my new color there, and if this was the right side, that's pretty well hidden in back. But if this is a blanket or something that can possibly get flipped over, I don't want that sticking out to get caught, or I don't want it to just show if someone flips over the blanket. So what I would do then when it's time to work the border, and I'm just going to go ahead and start working a border with this dark green here, when I come along the sides of my rows, I want to make sure to enclose that floated yarn in my border stitches. So I'll go into, I want to ignore it for the moment and go into the stitch just like I normally would to work a border there, but then I want to make sure that the border yarn is included, or excuse me, the floated yarn is on top of the hook when I work that border stitch. So there's one. Let me come down here where I would make the next one normally. And working into the edge of a project like this for a border, there's no specific location you're supposed to work these stitches into the sides of the rows. It's really a matter of personal preference. I've got a lot of ends in the way right now, so let me just pretend that it's got two floats here. Let's pretend I'm working with 3 colors. If this was another color and I had 2 floats here, I'd want to put them both on top of my hook to enclose them in that border stitch. Now you can only float so many colors because ultimately that's going to start getting really thick along the border there. But as long as I'd say up to 3 or 4 is probably about as many as you'd want to float on any given project. Otherwise, when you do work the border, it's going to start getting really thick and a little bit more noticeable. But okay, I've made a few single crochet stitches here. You can see from the front, you can't see that dark green that was floated along the side there at all. And from the back, if I can pull these light green ones out of the way here, there we go. It's pretty well hidden too. It's really not very noticeable as you work that border around your project. So that is how you can carry or float yarns along the side of your project without having to cut every time you change colors. It isn't going to work for every project you do, but it's a helpful tip for really simple stripes, or it doesn't even matter really what the stitch pattern is in here. It's just at the ends if you can float it along the side. And that will save you a lot of weaving in ends later. So I hope this video helped you out. If it did, please be sure to give it a like, let us know what you think in the comments, and thank you for subscribing to the Moogly YouTube channel.